Hey, before I get started today, please watch my other videos on how to convert lawnmowers and generators to run on propane, which is a lot easier and a lot better with a little kit that I designed, especially for you preppers out there. Also, I have some videos on selecting a concealed weapons handgun and situational awareness and training as it relates to my experience as a law enforcement officer. Now today what we're going to talk about is something called the poor man's shotgun slug, otherwise known as cut shells. Back before slugs were commercially available like we have them today, consider time periods of the late 1800s, early 1900s, and mid-1900s, slugs weren't all that common. Matter of fact, the ones that did exist out there were relatively expensive, and you had a lot of farmers and hunters who, hunted birds and other small game, but thought to themselves, how is it that I could bring home the bacon, so to speak, and hunt big game when I can't afford or I don't have shotgun slugs to use in some of these common single-shot break-action shotguns? And so what they decided to do was to convert birdshot loads, which were commonly available, into slugs. Well, how do you do that? Well, let's look at this a little more closely. First of all, what I want you to do is I want you to examine the birdshot load that you want to use. You've seen that I've done a little cutaway on this one. I've done a little cutaway for you so that you can see the different components of that shotgun. You have the powder charge here. You have the wadding or the buffer in the middle between the powder charge and the shot cup. You need to find where your wadding or your spacer or the buffer is as it relates to the ammunition that you have. The reason being is that is where you're going to cut this shotgun shell so that it will act as a shotgun slug when you fire it out of your gun. So how do we do that? What you're going to do is you're going to take a razor blade or a sharp knife, and you're not going to cut completely through the shell. You're only going to cut this plastic housing. You're not even going to cut into the wadding at all. You're going to cut around this plastic housing and stop just short of where you started so that there's just the smallest piece of plastic having that connection between the top and the bottom half, because you don't want this to fall apart. You don't want to put this in your shotgun or go to put it in your shotgun and your components fall out. The shot cup, the pellets, the powder all dump out on the ground. You want it to stay relatively intact. And so what's going to happen is when you put this in your shotgun and you fire it, the top half that contains the shot cup is going to detach at that midpoint and exit your shotgun just as a shotgun slug would. It's going to stay intact. The crimping on the top of these shells are not going to open, and this plastic housing and that shot cup and that wadding is going to act like a weight stabilized slug, and you can get some reasonably good accuracy even out of these smoothbore shotguns out to 50 and sometimes 100 yards and keep them all within a 4 or 5 inch circle. And so as you can imagine, when these pellets don't break apart to spread out as a normal shotgun shell would do with these pellets, these things are hitting with the same force of a slug, and depending on the weight of your birdshot, you can get all the way up to an ounce of weight out of these, maybe a little bit less in some cases, depending on, again, on your choice of birdshot. And when these things hit their target, that shot cup explodes. It dumps all that energy into the target, and you're going to have multiple wound channels when that shot cup finally breaks up and sends those pellets into other vital organs and stuff like that. So you can actually, again, use these bird loads as field expedient shotgun slugs. Now, a couple things we got to talk about with that is what type of shotguns do I use this in, and what about barrels? Let's talk about shotguns. I always recommend using a single shot break action shotgun such as this, or even a double barrel break action. These are simply the easiest ones to use with this, and they're easily available and they're relatively cheap. They're kind of the jack of all trades type of shotgun. You can actually use rifled slugs in these smoothbore shotguns if you have those available. However, if you don't have one of these, you can use a pump action shotgun or a semi-automatic shotgun, whether you have a tube magazine or a box magazine. it will still work, but do not load these in your tube magazine. Do not load these cut shells in your clips or magazines if you have one of those new AK style type of shotguns. These need to be loaded one at a time, singly. So what you would do is you would open your ejection port of your semi-automatic or pump-action shotgun, and you would take the shotgun shell and load it directly into the chamber, close the action, and fire it as normal. However, another thing to think about with semi-automatic and pump-action shotguns is, this is empty by the way, what kind of choke do I have on my barrel? Well, for those of y'all that aren't familiar, a choke is about the last 2 or 3 inches of your shotgun barrel near the muzzle. And what that does is different chokes have varying degrees of constriction. And what that is designed to do is to work with the type of shot, pellet size, and powerful load that you have in your shotgun to vary how quickly you want your shot to disperse. An open choke type of shotgun such as this, a cylinder or improved cylinder, is designed to throw those pellets out wide and quick. Which you may use for, let's say, squirrels, rabbits, ground birds that move quickly and stay on the ground. It's easier to hit them that way. But if you're hunting like geese and ducks, winged birds, waterfowl, you're going to have shotguns that have a tighter constriction, so that those pellets are contained in a tighter pattern for a longer distance to maintain their velocity, and those pellets open up later in that flight path than sooner when you're hunting some of these ground type of small game. Only use these in cylinder or improved cylinder barrels. The widest chokes available, the 2 widest chokes available are what you want to use these in. You do not want to use these on any tighter constriction of either factory-sized chokes or screw-in chokes. The reason for that is you may damage your barrel, or you may bulge the barrel, and even using these, repeated use of these through the wrong choke is going to start to stretch that choke. So if you wanted to have a tight choke on your shotgun and you fire a bunch of these, by the time you go out the next time to hunt those geese or those ducks, you may be throwing your pellets too far, losing a lot of velocity, losing a lot of power, and losing a lot of accuracy, so don't do that. So coming up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how these actually work. I'm going to shoot a couple of them. I'm going to take the components apart, so I'm going to shoot some 2x4s, and we'll see how they actually perform. So stick around, see you in just a minute. Okay, we're getting ready to shoot these 2 3/4 inch cut shells, or poor man slugs, as I called them in the first half of the video. What I'm using is number 8 shot Remington, just plain old target loads. This is the cutaway that I showed you in the first video of how the shot cup, the wadding, or the buffer is in the round, and then of course powder charge down here. These are the cut shells I just did. As you can see, they're cut just through that initial outer housing, not all the way through, with just enough plastic to keep it together as in one piece. And where these shells should break is right where I scored them. So these top halves should come off and act as a slug. The furthest distance that I'm going to be able to shoot today is about 25 yards. This is out in the country. It's in an unincorporated area of the county, and we can do this and it's safe. We're shooting in a safe direction into a big wood pile. But I got some targets over there we're going to take a look at. Alright, what we're getting ready to do, we're getting ready to shoot these poor man slugs. I've got 2 targets down there. I'm going to fire both these rounds off, and then we're going to take a look at the results. Eye protection always, and ear protection, and I have a safe backdrop over here of where these shotgun shells are going to be going. Number 2. Okay. Real quick, just to see, both these shells broke exactly where I expected them to. So in effect, the top half of this shotgun birdshot load became a slug. So let's go take a look at the targets. Well, here's what we have, just to let you know what kind of target we were shooting at. This is a pressure treated 2x4, and this is a piece of 3/4 inch plywood, and we've got some really clean holes that were cut by these field-made shotgun slugs, basically. And what that tells us is that these did not keyhole, they weren't tumbling in flight, they stayed relatively stable in order to hit these targets square on and cut some nice holes. And whoops, the hole went right through that 2x4, made a nice hole, even went into that stump there, and same thing here, went right through that plywood. And as I said in the first part of the video, after it went through that piece of plywood there, this birdshot load basically exploded. You can see where it kind of disintegrated. Wow, look at that. There's your shot cup and the slug after it went through its target and exploded. Again, creating multiple wound channels, and obviously when this hits soft tissue, it's going to go much deeper, and the expansion is going to be slightly delayed because it's not hitting a really hard target like that wood there. But hey, it works really well. Something to do for you preppers out there, or if you're in a bad way and need to take down some big game with a birdshot load. There you go. Hope it helps.